Hey, hey, hey. Wrestling all day, every day, episode 3, Sean. 3. I'm excited for this one, man. Johnny Faith. I've got goosebumps. Look, I've got goosebumps. Veteran
Yeah,
Johnny Faith meeting veteran
yeah.
Sean. So, folks, this is their show. I'm going to pop in to say hello, but I have been waiting for this one. So, Johnny Faith, Sean, roll with it. I'll pop in if I have anything to say, but I'm
Well,
ready.
hold on. Before we jump into that, man, I was just looking at our characters,
Man.
for the intro.
Oh,
I
yeah.
look like a King of the Hill character, dog, and you look like something like Family Guy. You know what I mean?
For sure. For sure. I do look like a
I
Family
like
Guy
it.
character. I can roll with it. Anime, Family Guy. Man,
Yeah,
I can do any
absolutely.
of it. Any of it. Video game characters. That's
Yeah.
what we need to do.
Yeah, I mean, we could do that. I mean, we'll figure it out. But yeah, man, I'm really excited about this show today. Before we jump into it, we
Yeah.
got War Driven Johnny Faith, man, and you can go ahead and look up here and see everything from Charlotte, North Carolina, residing in Georgia. That's pretty awesome. You can look at the accolades and everything that he has. But you know what? I think more than that, it's going to be just talking to him and seeing, his story, hearing where he came from, yeah, and what got him to where he is now, and why he is a professional wrestler.
For sure. Absolutely. Can't wait.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're gonna go ahead. I'm gonna bring you out. I'm gonna bring him in. All right, and then we are gonna get to it. Mr.
Hey,
War Driven Johnny Faith.
Yes, sir. Johnny Faith. Thank you, sir.
how's it going, boys? Thanks for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity. Anytime I can come on one of these and tell my story and talk to people about wrestling and my journey and all that, it's always a privilege. So I appreciate
Well,
you guys extending that olive branch to me.
yes, sir. Thank you for your service and thank you for coming on. This is an honor for us. I mean, seriously, you guys don't get thanked enough. Both of you guys, you guys don't get thanked enough for your service. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But I don't want to get into all that. So, Sean,
Well, Jay, Jay, man, it was voluntarily, right? Like we volunteered for this. We weren't put in a position to have to do this. I know people that were like jail or join the army, so that sucks,
Yeah.
right? But being a veteran and when we were active duty, man, like that to me,
Yeah.
it was my greatest honor. Being able to serve my country in the capacity I did.
I
And
definitely agree with that.
so Johnny, man, we always like to start the show off and yeah, sorry. So we like to start the show off, man, and we like to ask, what was your first memory in life of professional wrestling?
So I tell this story a lot. I actually, my first memory, I was probably about 5, I'd say maybe 6 years old. So it's probably 1990, 1991, maybe 1992, somewhere in there. I was flipping through the TV trying to find some cartoons to watch, and I came across an episode of WCW Worldwide. All right, and in Charlotte, where I grew up, like you said, it came on Saturday mornings, and I was like, oh, wrestling, oh, these guys are big. That was the first memory I had. I was flipping, trying to find some cartoons, found an episode of WCW Worldwide, went and told my mom about it, and my mom was like, hey, well, why don't you go talk to grandpa about it? So I went to my grandpa about it, later that day or, next day whenever I saw him. My grandfather was a professional wrestler as well, apparently, in the mid 1970s to the early 1980s. And bam, that was the hook right there. Just didn't need any more. That was it for me. It was a family affair, and bam.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And what a cool way to begin. We've interviewed guys that have it in their blood, and then we have guys that fell in love with it from watching TV. And you have both of the best of both worlds, watching TV and being born into it.
Definitely. I didn't even know I was really born into it until, like I said, I told my mom about it. She was like, John, what are you watching? What do you watch on TV? I was like, I'm watching guess I'm watching wrestling. I really didn't know what it was. I was 5 or 6, first time I'd ever seen it. So she was like, you need to talk to Grandpa about it. You need to go next time we're at Grandma and Grandpa's. Tell Grandpa what you were watching, and you'll be surprised on what you hear.
Yeah, that's pretty damn cool, man. So growing up, being younger before the military and all that stuff, who were some of the professional wrestlers that you enjoyed watching and that you kind of like idolized as a young kid?
So growing up, like I said, early 1990s, I first started watching wrestling. Back then, it was more WCW than anything. WWF back then really wasn't on TV in the South as much as WCW was. You had like WCW Saturday Night, WCW Worldwide. WWE had some other things that would air at like 2 a.m. long before I went to bed, like Shotgun Saturday Night and some other things like that. But mostly it was WCW, so it was like Ric Flair, Sting, Steamboat, Arn Anderson. My grandpa was a heavy WCW supporter because a lot of people that he worked with and worked for, were either management or wrestlers still for WCW. So his house was a WCW house, I believe, and Flair, Anderson, all that. Then once the Attitude Era hit, it was Austin, Taker, the whole shebang throughout the Attitude Era. Pretty much everybody, I guess. That whole era was just crazy, no matter who the wrestler was.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And being from Charlotte, I would feel you had to be a Flair boy, right? Like that. He's from Charlotte. He's from that area. Born and bred. That you kind of have to be a Ric Flair kind of man. You know what I mean?
Definitely. Anytime anybody had, from Charlotte, North Carolina, anytime I ever heard a wrestler, say they were even built from Charlotte, I was just like, oh, cool, I'm going to support them. Like Ron the Truth Killings or, R-Truth. He's another one from Charlotte, and, first time I heard him say from Charlotte, I'm like, oh, that's the hometown, because you hear New York City a lot, you hear California, Florida. You don't really hear Charlotte. You only hear Flair from Charlotte. But when other wrestlers, started coming from Charlotte, then started becoming a big thing. Because Charlotte is a wrestling town. It's a hidden gem right there. People don't know a lot about it. They think it fell off, but it really didn't.
No, and you're absolutely right. And it's cool to see that, and I live in Maryland, and so like there's not a lot of claim to fame from Maryland, right? Like, I mean, we have James Ellsworth, who's from like Baltimore, and then we've got LA Knight, who's from Hagerstown. They just gave him the keys to the city like last year or some shit like that. So we don't get a lot. So like when you're kind of when those wrestlers or those celebrities kind of pop up from that town, that's a big deal.
Yeah, to me it was, especially in wrestling, because it was always cool to hear my city, on TV. You know what I mean? It was always cool to hear Charlotte, North Carolina on TV. That's why I fell in love with him. He was already from my town. Then obviously the personality and the wrestling aspect behind it followed. But I thought it was cool because he was the first wrestler I ever heard, from Charlotte, North Carolina. So I was like, oh, cool, man. That's my wrestler then.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ric Flair, regardless as to what happens, what's happened now with his life and his career, like he's still the damn man, right? Like it don't matter. It doesn't matter if Cena took that 17. Ric Flair is still the damn man, right? And he was still putting quality matches on way up into his 50s, right? And so like Ric Flair, in my opinion, is one of the goats.
Definitely, and just not based on accolades alone, just based on influence, like how many people he has influenced in wrestling, from, when he first started all the way till now currently, the influence, that's the key, the wrestling aspect, the accolades, the championships, but the influence, that is where the bread and butter is.
I feel like he was one of the first ones to be. I think he really brought along the flashy, like like the whole flashy aspect of everything. I know Hulk Hogan kind of did it there, but I think as far as Flair goes, like he was the one that had the flash. He could wrestle, and he knew the audience. So I mean, he was all around the perfect wrestler at the time. Like he was like Shawn Michaels Ric Flair's like Shawn Michaels, basically. I mean, if you want to think about it, showstopper, flash wise, that's who I would think of when I would think of Ric Flair as an all around guy. I mean, as far as an older guy, so I'm a Flair guy. I just had to throw that in there too. So.
Hey man, AJ, that's kind of a betrayal coming from Tennessee, my man. You're supposed to be a Jerry the King Lawler guy.
Dude, I'm a Lawler guy all day long, but hey, I love everybody, man. I like a lot of wrestlers. But yeah, of course I'm a
Yeah.
Lawler guy. Lawler's the man. He's like family. So,
But yeah, and what an awesome space to grow up in, as a fan of professional wrestling. I remember when I first started watching, man, my first memories in life was Andre and Hogan at Mania 3, and uh, then I kind of stopped watching wrestling. Look. I did a leg drop on my sister. I did a Hulk Hogan leg drop on my sister when I was like 3 or 4. Okay, and like got wrestling taken away from me for a while, and I got reintroduced back into wrestling '97 for Starrcade '97 when it was Hogan and Sting for the heavyweight championship.
Yep.
And
That was a good build up. That was such a good build up for such a not good ending to the build up. But I mean, that year and a half that they built it up, and then that match ending, great match all the way until the end, and then like just to end that 18-month feud that was so well put together, and Sting didn't wrestle the whole freaking time pretty much until that match, and then what happened. Everyone, that's, I don't know. To me, I think that's where WCW died a little bit.
Yeah, I would say that's the beginning of the end for WCW, which was sad because it took 3 long-term storytelling. It took 4 years for them to deteriorate, right, into nothing. And so moving on past that, man. Getting a little bit more personal stuff. What made you want to join the military?
So 9/11 happened, obviously, and a lot of guys from my school was trying to join, and this was I was in high school, so it was high school years. All right, it's early 2000s. Really hated high school. Just really hated school. Period. My life was kind of, I was a rebellious teenager. All that. Still watched wrestling, did all that. But 9/11 happened, and it really put a lot of things into perspective. Because a lot of my buddies were like ready to go. They were like, ready, hey, man. As soon as I turn 17, my mom's going to sign this form, and I'm out. You know what I mean? And I felt the same way. And I really wasn't headed into a direction that probably would have had a positive path for me at the time. And so I really thought the military was the way to go for me. And I honestly just thought that, I could go get 4 years out of it, get some college out of it, because the way I'm going now, college wasn't, in the books at all. And so that was it, man. And, I tried, like I said, I wanted to do 4, fell in love with it, wound up staying a freaking ton longer. And just fell in love with everything that happened to come with the military, ups and downs as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I can agree with that, man. I signed my contract in 2006, and I intended to do 3 years and 20 weeks because that's what they gave me, and then 12 and a half years later, I got medically retired. You know what I mean? And so
exactly.
There's a little bit of love and a little bit of hate for the military. More love than there is hate. When you signed up, what was your initial contract like? What was your MOS going in?
It was 12 Bravo, and it was 3 weeks plus training. So it was 3 years, 16 weeks initial contract. That was going to be the end all for me. You know what I mean? Because I was just going to get my 3 years, get my college, and I was going to go to college and try to make something with my life. You know what I mean? And wound up deploying. Fell in love with the boys. Didn't really fall in love with deploying, but at the same time, it was an experience I'll never ever be able to take back. As far as the things that I saw, people lost. Just crazy crap going on that war is. You know what I mean? But wouldn't take it back. in a heartbeat. I mean, yeah, it keeps me up at night sometimes. It keeps me on my toes at times, but at the same time, the experiences that I had, you know, really I would never have ever dreamed of having. You know what I'm saying? Walking into a Saddam palace, walking into an outpost built by Alexander the Great. These things that I would never ever be able to do that I did through the army. Yes, it sucked at times. Yes, it was horrible. But the positives for me outweigh the negatives. So that's why I stayed in so long.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I 100% agree. 12 Bravo, combat engineer. Yeah.
Yeah, IED explosion. Route clearance. Just not anything that explodes. I went and looked for. And
Hey, man. Some of my best friends when I was I was a 13 Fox Forward Observer. Some of my
gotcha.
best friends were combat engineers because they let me pull the blasted cap, dude.
Nice,
So yeah,
nice.
yeah. So I mean, you know, it is, it's crazy. And so, where were the duty stations that you were assigned at?
So I did a stint. I did the old Korea tour. So I did that. I did Kansas, Korea, went back to Kansas, deployed pretty much right out the gate, after basic and all that. Missouri, Fort Riley, Kansas, and then that was it. And then I got medically retired out. I was the army pretty much told me they didn't want me anymore, and I really didn't want to change my job either. And the only way I was going to be able to stay in was to change my job. And honestly, if I wasn't going to be a foot soldier or on the line somewhere, I wasn't going to be in. So
Yeah.
so I decided to just bow out, take my retirement, go home.
Yeah, absolutely. I can relate to that, man. I was in Vicenza, Italy with 173rd, and then went to 82nd, and then 425 in Alaska, man. And I got to that point where they were like, "Hey, man, you're just too broken. We don't want you." And look, man, I don't know if you suffered from this, man, but like getting to that point where the military says, "Oh, I don't want you anymore," or we can't use you anymore. Uh, did that feel like to you like an identity crisis? Like you were
It
about to
did,
face an
and
identity crisis?
yeah, because it started in 2013. I didn't get out till 15. All right, so that started in 2013, where the army was kind of like, we don't know exactly what we're going to do with you. What are your plans? Do you plan on staying in 20 years? Because if you do, you're going to have to change MOSs because your Q list doesn't meet the requirements for any kind of combat job. So I was like,
Yeah.
at the same time, I was like, well, what do we got? What are the options here? And they gave me a list of like 8 things. And it was, finance, mortuary affairs was one. And, it was, I am not disrespecting any of those jobs whatsoever, but it was not me. You know what I mean? I am a combat soldier. I
Yeah.
belong out there with my guys next to them, not behind them, not doing their paperwork, not getting their supplies, next to them. And if I couldn't be next to them, then I was going home. Somebody else could take my place and make sure they made it through the next one. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely, man. And furthermore, like sending them home, in a box. I can't imagine. I can't. Sorry for my language. I can't fucking imagine like being put in that position where like I would have to send my guys home or somebody I may potentially know home in a box and say, "Hey, look, sorry, I can't fucking do
Yeah,
it."
man. That's what I'm saying, man.
And
So
so
if I couldn't beat it, yeah.
yeah, I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that, man. So when did the thought process for you about, hey, I want to step in this new venture of professional wrestling? When did that start for you?
So I got so many stories, man. Like just how everything fell into place. So think about this. All right, so let me paint this picture real quick. From about I want to say 1950 to about 1975, 74. My grandfather was in the army, deployed to
Hmm.
Korea, deployed to Vietnam. All right,
Hmm.
got out of the army, went to the gym, Charlotte, North Carolina, went to the gym. A man by the name of Jackie Fargo came up to him and said, "You are a huge freaking dude. Do you think you could make money? I think you could make money in wrestling. What do you think?" Grandpa was like, sold. I just came back from Vietnam. I did 3 tours. I'm looking for a new opportunity. So he went and trained for 6 months with a guy named Johnny Hunter, and he became a wrestler. All right. My path, Army, got out of the Army. Wasn't at the gym, though. I was not at the gym when I was found. I actually went to a local wrestling show that I found on a Facebook like marketplace page. It was a local buy sell trade right outside of Fort Riley, Kansas, and out in Kansas. I just retired out. I found a little wrestling company called XWE. All right, they were about an hour away. So I went out there, $5 for military. I was like, hey, why not? All right, let's do it. $5 military. Let's go see some pro wrestling, local indie pro wrestling. Never been to an indie show before, ever. All right, besides WWE and all that, I've been to those, but never been to an indie show like that. Went, was hooked, didn't know the storylines, nothing, knew none of the wrestlers, was hooked, kept going back every month. So finally I messaged the wrestling page and was like, hey guys, do you need any help setting up chairs, anything like that? Owner texted me and was like, hey man, I'm reopening my training facility now that we have a permanent spot. Are you interested in training to become a wrestler? Because I think you could take the skills from the military and bring them over to wrestling, and I think we might have something here. And I was like, bet, no doubt. Let's do it. So Grandpa and myself, kind of same thing, almost the same thing happened verbatim. You know what I'm saying? So I went to trained for about 8 months with him, a man by the name of Billy Simmons out there in Salina, Kansas, and made my debut in April of 2019.
Nice. That's awesome. That's pretty sick. Yeah, you and your grandfather like parallel pretty much your whole career.
We did, and it was a pure coincidence, honestly. Like I said, everything fell into place. I was not looking to go to the Army. It just happened to be one of those things that just fell into place. I was not looking to be a wrestler. I mean, I had wanted to be a wrestler my whole life. Once I found out Grandpa had done it, obviously. 9/11 happened, put it on the back burner for a long time. Didn't think I was going to be able to, get the opportunity to wrestle, to ever have the chance to train, properly and all that. And then bam, that opportunity fell right into my lap. I could have not have asked for anything more verbatim to drop in my lap than that. He was just like, hey man, I need a couple of people to help me reopen my training facility. Are you interested? And of course I, jumped on the opportunity. I didn't have nothing to do, just retired out of the Army. I got nothing to do.
Yeah. Jay, what you got something you want to add?
I was just saying that's the reason I do this, man. The stories like that. See, the behind the scenes stories of where you guys come from is just that's why I do this. That's why I push so hard for you guys. I mean, I know people think I'm crazy, and the wrestlers are like, this guy's trying to get something. I know they think I am, but your stories need to be seen and need to be heard, man. Like I like WWE and stuff like that too. We and Sean talk about this all the time, but you and the stories you do are what I want to hear. Like, I want to make you be seen and be big because you're doing this for me. And you even did the damn military. You were in the military for me. So, like, I don't want to get emotional, but you did 2 things for me. So there's no way that I can help you pay that, but at least I can show you here and try to get you some, flashy on the wrestling side. So anyway, that's all I needed to say before I get, I get all emotional over the military thing. So we'll just move on from that. But you guys weren't treated right, still aren't treated right. It pisses me off, but I'm going to move on. So wrestling.
It's just weird how everything fell into place for me, honestly. And it's weird how me and Grandpa's path really are similar, and how followed in his footsteps. He wrestled for about 8.5, 9 years or so, I think, total. Before his body just couldn't take it anymore. I mean, he spent 23 years in the Army and then, became a wrestler for 8 years after that. So, I mean, I figured, he did his time on his body, man. Eventually it just broke down, on him, I guess, and all that, and the funny thing about it is, he really only shared a few stories with me about wrestling. It was, he really didn't talk. I mean, he's an old veteran, man. He's one of those guys that sat on the couch and watched his hunting shows, his fishing shows, and you kind of just left Grandpa alone, But now if there was a pay-per-view or something, he'd be watching it with us. me and my uncles, we watched, wrestling, old school WCW pay-per-views. Like you're talking about Starrcade 97. We definitely sat in my grandma and grandpa's living room and watched that thing. We definitely did as a family. It was great.
And that that's crazy. My grandfather was a Marine in Vietnam, and so like a lot of the stories I had heard a handful of them, from him as a Marine, and it wasn't until I got out that I heard more because I could understand what he was talking about, right? And I just went to go visit him. He lives about an hour and a half, 2 hours away, and I went to go visit him last month. And I sat down, and him and I were talking about a few stories, and he looked at me. He's like, "You still watch wrestling?" I was like, "Grandpa, I still watch wrestling." And he's like, "Well, let's watch some wrestling then." And so, like, we just sat down. I had that moment, and it was pretty awesome. So my next question, man, is you said that your first match was in April of 2019. How was the pandemic for you as a professional wrestler?
So the pandemic shut down everything. Obviously, the world knows that the world shut down. But for me as a wrestler, I wrestled like I think it was January, February, and March of that year. But I think after March, pretty much everything was done for about 18 months. I didn't wrestle again until like that next September because things were slowly took forever to open back up. And where I was living in Kansas at the time, and Kansas was taking its slow freaking time opening everything back up. They were like one of the last states to allow like public sporting events, and we were the companies out there were hurting. They really were. I mean, COVID really killed a lot of indie companies. It did, but we bounced back. We did once COVID was over. We started. It took a couple months. Our a lot of people didn't come out for the first few, probably about 6 months after everything opened up. So the crowds were a little small, but then once the vaccine started coming and people started not getting as sick and all that, and crowds started picking up. But as far as the pandemic goes, I spent an entire 18 months pretty much twiddling my thumbs.
That's got to be rough, man. I can't imagine. I was doing something a little different in pandemic, but I can only imagine, dude. And you had to have been chomping at the bit to get back in the ring, dude.
Yeah, because we couldn't even train either. Like I couldn't even go to training. We had a facility, that we could go train at, every night if we wanted to, but because of the strict laws, you go to jail. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like if they caught you, doing, something like that, like, so we couldn't even train. So I mean, obviously, I just did like what I could around the house, body exercises and things like that. There's no gym, had to run around the neighborhood, all that to try to stay in shape, but that was probably the worst part was trying to keep in shape, honestly, during the pandemic.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine, man. And like on top of that too, like you said, I lived in Alaska at the time, and they hadn't put jail time on anybody for breaking that uh, the regulations, but it sounds like Kansas was taking it very, very seriously.
Yeah, and they took it so slow, like towards the end. Like I said, I think our last show was like February, and then I wrestled like another place in March, and that was the last time I wrestled before like it nationwide shut down. Kansas shut down in February. Kansas shut down everything in February. I think March and April, somewhere in there, was when the nationwide shutdown happened, and then it took Kansas forever to approve, sporting events again, in-person sporting events. So there was a few things. I did a couple studio matches here and there for some YouTube TV shows where we went to a secluded place in Missouri, disclosed location in Missouri, and we shot a bunch of studio matches. But we kept our distance except for me and the opponent. We all took COVID tests. We took the precautions, but we were just trying to stay in shape, trying to wrestle. Trying to put out something for our fans. Because rolling into 8, 9, 10, 11 months into the pandemic, we didn't know when it was going to end, so we were just trying to, give the fans something.
Yeah, absolutely. Jay, you got something you want to add?
I want to hear the back from the ashes story. Was it the heart attack that you had a heart attack?
Oh, yeah.
I want to hear
So
if you want to give it. I want to hear the back from the he went back from ashes, man, to where he's at now. I want to hear that story because
all
that's
right.
Yeah, I will mute myself. I will hear this.
So I'll try to sum it up as quick as I can. All right. So April 6th, no, excuse me, March 6th of last year, me and my wife were in the middle of doing an overhaul of our house. So we were in the middle of, replacing a bed in my daughter's room. We were taking out a bed. I was building a bed to put it in there. Was in the middle of putting the bed together. Came outside to throw something in my garbage can, and I felt something like really painful in my chest, like bad, and it spread to my arm. And I sat down in the chair outside, for a second in my driveway, and I was like, is this really happening? Like, or is it going to pass? Like, I thought, I got real bad GERD from the burn pits, so I thought that's what it was. I thought it was GERD, like acid reflux, something like that. Because it can kind of give you the symptoms of a heart attack. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes. So that's what I thought it was. So I came inside and I took, some medicine, so omeprazole, just to see if that would clear it up. Didn't clear the pain up anyway at all. Went to the doctor. They were like, you had a heart attack and your heart is blocked, and now you need to have emergency open heart surgery to do a bypass. So I was like, oh, that's freaking great. Thank you, doctor. So they shipped me down to Jacksonville, Florida. I had open heart surgery, single bypass open heart surgery. They took an artery from my arm right here. Instead of a vein, because usually for bypasses they take a vein, but because I'm so young and healthy, they took an artery instead from my forearm for the bypass. Surgery was a success. There was no damage to my heart whatsoever, no scar tissue, no nothing. It was almost like a miraculous heart attack, like nothing. Like that, I had 99% blockage in one artery and 50 something percent in the other, and there was no damage to the heart whatsoever. So they give me 8 weeks of recovery for my sternum bone to heal. So I pretty much laid out for 8 weeks in my recliner, and my family pretty much took care of me. So I laid out for 8 weeks, watching TV, watching wrestling, whatever I could, watching the companies that I work for, keeping up with their storylines and all that. And after 8 weeks, I went back to the doctor. They were like, hey, your sternum bone's good to go. You can go to cardiac rehab. So I spent the entire month of June or May of last year at cardiac rehab in Jacksonville, Florida. Wound up doing 4 months of cardiac rehab in 1 month. Graduated from there in 1 month, and was given the green light like May 27th or May 28th of last year that everything was good with my heart and I was cleared for full activities. So I spent the entire month of freaking June in the gym, slowly working myself back to my strength. I lost so much weight. I lost so much weight at the beginning, and then I gained it all back at the end, if that makes sense. So I was really skinny after my heart attack. And then I gained a lot of weight during the recovery period, obviously, because I was sitting around, doing nothing pretty much. So when he gave me the green light and said that I believe you can wrestle and there'd be no restrictions, obviously I thought the career was over. I really did. I thought the career was over. But when he gave me that and told me the last round of testings look immaculate, looks like your heart didn't even have a heart attack, you wouldn't even know that you had a heart attack unless if you saw the scar. So I took it as a blessing, as a miracle, whatever you want to call it, and spent the entire month of June getting back what I lost every day, doing something. And my first match back was 4 months, almost to the day after my heart attack.
Man, you shot out of that like a cannon, my friend.
War driven is at the beginning of the name for a reason. That's
Oh
awesome.
yeah, we're gonna get to that, man. We're gonna get to that. So did the fans know that? Like, did the fans of the companies you worked for, did they know you had a heart attack?
Yes, because I put out a live video in the hospital room the night before
Mm.
my surgery. Because honestly, I'm not gonna lie, dude. Like I got my will together, and like all that shit, because like I really didn't know how the surgery was gonna play out, honestly. So I shot a video for my fans and for everybody to let them know, hey, I had a heart attack. I'm having open heart surgery tomorrow. I'll keep you updated on how progress is going. Blah blah blah. So yeah, I didn't keep that from anybody. Everyone freaking knew because that's not something I'm when it comes to my fans, I will be honest and open with them about everything, especially my injuries or anything like that. I will not sugarcoat it or anything like that. I'll be like, hey, I'm sorry, I can't make HCW this weekend. I tweaked my ankle. I'll see you next month. You know what I mean? So for the heart
Yeah.
attack thing, that was a big deal, because honestly, I at that point I didn't think that I'd be able to wrestle again. The doctor was just like, we have to wait until you recover before I can make that call. So I spent 8 weeks, 9 weeks debating on whether if I could even step into the ring again. And
What was
so I
what was what was the deciding factor for you that, hey, I'm doing this. I'm getting back in the ring. Aside, I mean, obviously the doctor cleared you to wrestle, but there's got to be something in the back of your brain that's like, "Eh, is it smart to get back in the ring? What was that deciding factor for you?
so on the way home, so where my doctor's was, it was about 45 minutes from my house, and me and my wife were driving home from my appointment, and I was talking to her, and I was just like, look, like honestly, like is this even feasible? I mean, I know what the doctor said. I know he said, yes, you're good to go. Obviously in the back of my head, it's always, my safety and my health first before anything. Now, I have a family, kids and all that. So I got to make sure I think of them first before anything, about that. And, she was just like, if it's something you really want to do, then just keep doing it. Then just keep freaking doing it. Like do the best you can, and I'm the type of person that if I can't do it all the way, I'm not going to do it at all. You know what I'm saying? So it's like my army. It's if I couldn't be a combat soldier, then I'm not going to be in the army anymore. You know what I mean? And that's the same with wrestling. If I can't do it the way I want to do it and at my level and at what I know I'm capable of, then there's no point in me being in a wrestler anymore. So that was what the entire month of June of last summer was. I spent the whole month pretty much doing what I could to get back into ring shape, to get the weight off, all that. And then had a fatal 4-way match, as my first match back from my heart attack. Pretty good match. I mean, fatal 4-way, you don't really work as much because there's 3 other guys. But, to have my heart beating, pumped up, adrenaline going, fans, yelling and all that, just to put myself back in that environment, with a test in its own. And honestly, I didn't like the way I wrestled. I didn't like the way I wrestled 5 times total since I've wrestled 5 times total since my heart attack. And they have all been good matches from what I've been told. But for me, for my performance, I honestly did not like the way I performed. All right. I really contemplated stepping away from wrestling, and this leads into another freaking story. Jacobs Pritchard's Wrestling Academy with Dr. Tom Pritchard drops into my freaking lap again. Like just another coincidence. Just here you go, man. I think you could use this. They dropped into my lap. All right. And it was almost like another wake up call, because I was literally about to hang it up. Like I was literally going to talk to my wife and be like, look, the heart attack really took something from me. Like, obviously I'm not the same. I had 5 matches and I really didn't like them at all. And Jacob and Dr. Tom falls into my lap. They're like, hey, we're starting a new class in January. We're looking for people to join. If you're an established wrestler, level up today, the whole sales pitch for them. So I went to my wife and I was like, so just jokingly, I was just like, so what if I moved to Tennessee for 3 months and got retrained? And she was like, okay, how can we make this work? And I was like, what? I was like, are you serious? So So I moved to Tennessee and wound up training under Dr. Tom for 3 months and got that confidence back. Like War Driven was reborn. Like, before the heart attack, I was the American hero, Johnny Face. All right, I really was. But that heart attack took something, obviously. So I recreated myself. Still the same person, just turned it up a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more intense, and now that I got, Dr. Tom's training under my belt and I found that new love for wrestling again, I'm ready. You're right. That's War Driven, but it's just the tip of the iceberg, guys. It really is, man. Like I just my story is just something that you couldn't even write, man.
Absolutely. And that's what a great segue. Your name, War Driven. What does that mean to you?
So to me, that means somebody who is driven to do whatever he can to make sure the things around him that he loves and appreciates are cared for, defended, and honored. And if I have to go to war to keep that, then I will. So I'm driven by war.
You almost made me tear up, dog. Like, no joke.
Well, here's the second time.
Yeah, there's a first for everything. Man, what an amazing story. What an absolute amazing story. And it sounds like your wife is fully supportive of that. And that is and look, man, to be honest, like it's very rare to find a woman like that is fully supportive of your career and literally will say, hey, I'm going to support you in whatever it is that you want to do. And so like you got a good woman on your hands.
Yeah, she's definitely on board. Now, when I met her, she had no idea really what wrestling was. She never watched wrestling, honestly. And, so she didn't know. And I told her I was a wrestler. And so she was just like, okay, cool. She really didn't understand, what that entitled until we actually like moved in together. And like, she saw me like cutting promos and sharing show flyers and building the war room in our house, taking a section of our house and building my little war room that I call it a war room. And she's been on board. She supports my dreams. She says that I deserve it. And, honestly, I think that I do deserve it, but at the same time, my family deserves a great life as well. But if I can do this and give them that at the same time, then, I'm all happy for it because, I didn't have any children or anything like that until I met her. And, I inherited her children. They became my children. And, they are my children and we go to shows together and, I've introduced them to the world of professional wrestling, both in front of the camera and behind it.
They're our future.
That's awesome.
That's what I'm trying to do. That's what I'm trying to do with my children. Like I have the 13-year-old, I blanked out, 16-year-old, 13-year-old, and a 1-year-old. And that's what I'm trying to do is keep the magic of wrestling alive. Like I like trying to show them the old days, the indie days, not the, just an example, not the Triple H that you see on TV that can barely walk, like, the game that spits the water, take them back to The Rock when he was Rocky Maivia, go back to, back before Hulk Hogan, like, just keeping it alive. And that you just mentioned your kids, and that just kind of threw me into that. Definitely.
No, that's exactly what I'm trying to do.
It's awesome that you do that. So, for sure.
Absolutely. So we're gonna move on. We're gonna talk a few minutes about some of the things outside of your career, man. Johnny, what do you like in professional wrestling right now?
I think there's a lot of good storytelling going on right now in pro wrestling, like especially WWE. WWE really has some great freaking stories going on right now. Cody Rhodes Cena thing's really good. Seth Rollins Heyman thing that came out of nowhere. Same with the Braun Breaker thing. So like there's a lot of and that's what drew me as a fan to wrestling was the storytelling. The wrestling did as well. The larger than life characters, the different kind of gimmicks that you saw, that drew me as well. But when that like gimmickish part of wrestling came to an end in the mid 90s and the Attitude Era began and all those crazy storylines came out, you know, that's what hooked me was the storylines. And, you know, that's always what draws me in as a wrestling fan, you know, especially, you know, it's like when I first discovered that company out in Kansas, you know, I had to figure out their storylines, you know, because I was really invested, you know, after the first show. So I needed to figure out what storylines were going on, you know, so I could figure out who to cheer, who to boo, like, you know, all that. So I really like storytelling. You know, I like to tell stories too. So I like being involved in the storytelling as well. But right now, I really think there's a lot of good storytelling in professional wrestling.
It makes
Absolutely.
it personal.
And I find go ahead, Jay.
It makes it personal. Like that's the best part of it for sure. Like when you can, well, when you get to know the character, that's a lot of the things that people don't do. Though a lot of the places that have wrestling, they don't have storylines. Like, you know, the storyline is what brings in the crowd. The storyline is what makes you fall in love with that character, and that character becomes your hero. So, you knew that already. That it's my 2 cents, and sorry about that. So yeah. Anyway,
No, you're good. And that's what, as a fan, that's what I enjoy is the storytelling, right? If you look at some of the greatest storytellers of all time, you got your Jake the Snake Roberts, you got your Ric Flairs, you got your Stings, you got your Hogans, your Cenas, your CM Punks, your Roman Reigns, right? Like stories that are built from a small foundation that become larger than life and like almost to the point of like, I want to live that. I thoroughly enjoy the storytelling aspect of professional wrestling, and so I'm glad that I hear another a professional wrestler that actually says I enjoy that too.
I do because it helps me become creative. Like it really does. Like I was when I first started wrestling. All right, April 2019, my first match. I was involved with a faction called the American Way, big faction out in Kansas. Consisted of three guys. And we had a story. We told a story for almost 2 years from my debut match, actually from the month before, because the month before they powerbombed me through a table during my contract signing. That's where the feud started between me and them three. All the way through the pandemic. We kept it through the pandemic where they chased me from the gym. They came to my house and like did things to my car. Like we kept the story going like as much as we could throughout this pandemic. I swear to God. And then once the pandemic was lifted, I went through each one of them. I fought one guy, loser leaves town match. Bam, he was gone. Fought another guy, beat him. Bam, his partner turns on him. Bam, I wrestled a partner to finish it all in a first blood match, you know. So like our feud was 2 years in the making, and it made me so creative because I did promos dressed up like all three of them. Like one of them was a redneck, 100 proof redneck. He had like a beard and stuff like yours, Sean, and you know long hair. So I bought a beard, I bought hair, I dressed like him. I did a promo in the woods, like I did all kinds of stuff. You know what I mean? Like, and that's what I love. I love to try to be creative, you know, and if promoters and bookers and, you know, companies put me in storylines, you know, that's one thing they can expect from me is that I will do what I can to be creative to get the story over because, you know, to me, it makes it fun, man. It really does.
Absolutely. And it's good. It's good to hear that you don't have to do 1,000 super kicks and a million destroyers to make that happen. Oh, and let's not forget, Jay, our favorite, the spear.
spears and super kicks every episode. Super kicks and spears. That's our thing. We should have just named this super kicks.
You know what?
Yeah.
In the 6 years I've wrestled, I can honestly say I have never done a super kick. I have never given somebody a super kick. Never. And I've taken a lot of super kicks, obviously, but I have never done a super kick. Swear to God, honestly.
You didn't see him until Shawn Michaels, and then after that, it's like everybody. I've seen so many of them. It's ridiculous. I mean, every single person almost does a super and a spear. So that's why I always, you know, that's why I always say
on
that.
WWE now or AEW now, you'll see a super kick every match at least. So it's kind of played out a little bit for me. But you know, for me, I really didn't care to kick, man. I was more a suplex guy. You know, I'd rather throw you. You know, I'd rather throw you around than kick you and punch you. You know what I'm saying? Like that's kind of my mentality. You know, my army combatives mentality wants me to get in there and take you out. Honestly.
Yeah, I'm a huge. I'm a huge fan of a good suplex, a good German suplex, a good, any kind of suplex, man, because that shows strength, it shows agility and ability, right? And it shows that pure aggressive explosion, right? Because you gotta thrust with the hips, dude. And if you're not thrusting with the hips, you run a potential of injuring your opponent, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm a massive fan of seeing a good German suplex, a good belly to belly suplex. You name a suplex, I enjoy it.
Me too, man. That's
um,
how I am, man. I'm a suplex guy.
yeah, absolutely. I got two questions, and then we'll shut down shop. The first one: if you could choose any three people, and it doesn't even matter, promotion aside, like just lump everybody together. If you could choose three people to work with right now, who would it be?
Alive or dead, or it doesn't
Either.
matter.
Either, any of them.
My grandpa. I'd love for him to freaking beat the shit out of me. I'm not even kidding. My grandpa for one. Cody Rhodes definitely. Cody Rhodes is another one. But Cody Rhodes
Yeah.
is always like this is I don't know how many podcasts I've done, but somebody always asks me, who would you like to work or who's your dream opponent? It's always been Cody Rhodes, and this goes back to I've been a Cody Rhodes fan since like before he was with Legacy, like before the mask, like all that, like when he was dashing Cody Rhodes, I guess. He
Yeah.
had something about him, and I knew eventually one day he'd be at the top of the mountain. How long it took to get there, I didn't know at the time, but I knew at some point he'd get there, and he inspired me because he got there. And the whole going to AEW, leaving AEW, reinventing himself, and then getting back up there to the top of the mountain here in WWE was, that was phenomenal storytelling in its own. So Grandpa, Cody Rhodes, and then the third one I'd have to say the guy who originally trained me. His name's Billy Simmons. He's out in Kansas. I would really like to work him. He's getting up there in age, and I know Billy, you're going to be like, what the hell, Johnny? Anyways, he's getting up there in age, but I really before he hangs up for good, I really would like to work my original trainer.
Nice. I have met a lot of respect for Cody, simply for the fact that the whole run where he said, "I went from unobtainable to undeniable," or whatever he said. I felt that because like he pretty much went from like a gimmick and Stardust to arguably one of the biggest superstars in the world, arguably probably the next John. I hate comparing people, but he could be the next biggest babyface in the world with John Cena, right? And
Yeah.
and so like that's not a name that's forgettable, right? Like I can get in my car and I can turn my Cody Rhodes song on, drive down the street, and you'll see a kid when he hits a kid doing that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Down the street, just randomly. That is the effect that he has in not just professional wrestling, but in the world itself. It's crazy.
Yeah, my kid found the song on TikTok like about 5 or 6 months ago, and she was listening to it, and I was like, "Are you watching wrestling?" She's like, "No, I'm watching a TikTok video." I was like, "That's Cody Rhodes' music." She's like, "Yeah, but it's not wrestling." I was like, "But it is wrestling in a way. The ladies in your video
Yeah,
are just using his music."
absolutely, absolutely. And finally, before we go, man, I always like to do this thing. I kind of adopted it from Chris Van Vliet. I love him. I think he's a phenomenal interviewer. But the last question he asked in the show is kind of what we're going to ask here. What are three things you're grateful for?
Three things I'm grateful for: my family. I'm always grateful for my family. Whether it's my wife and my kids, or my mother and my father, or grandpa, my sisters, just family in general. And my family actually extends a little bit further than just blood. I got some people in my circle that I consider family as well. And, for me, my family's been there my entire life, through the ups and downs of the military. We definitely know how that is. And, sometimes all I had was family back then, and, I had to lean on them a lot for that. And then going from not having a family into to having a wife and two kids, on top of it, almost overnight, it's a blessing in itself too, because I never thought I'd have that. So family is definitely the number one thing. Like that will always be the number one thing. Number two, I would probably say professional wrestling is definitely number two, because that saved my life. It really did. And, a lot of people talk about, 22 veterans a day. A lot of people, myself included, know somebody that probably has been part of the 22 a day. And, of course, I've lost quite a few to that. And at that time in my life, I was in a low point, and then I found professional wrestling. I found that little tiny company in Salina, Kansas, and that's all she wrote. You know what I'm saying? And at the same time, it happened again when I started going to train with Dr. Tom Pritchard. I was at that low point again, was like, I feel like my wrestling career is over, nothing for me, blah, blah, blah. Then I got rejuvenated again by wrestling. It seems like when my life got really crappy, wrestling rejuvenated it. Family did as well, but wrestling, gave it that extra push, if that makes sense. And then number three, I would have to say, I'm grateful to be healthy and alive. All right. I'm grateful to be in a position where I can actually wrestle. It's like I was talking to my wife earlier, and I was talking to my trainer earlier as well. And, I send him videos every day of my workout sessions just to make sure I'm doing them correctly and things like that. But I was talking to him, both of them earlier, and I was like, I'm so grateful that I can actually wrestle. That I am in a position where I had a heart attack, almost killed me in our driveway. And, here I am a year and, 2 months later wrestling, and I told them, I was like, if I could make it through 12 weeks at Dr. Tom Pritchard School, then my heart is definitely 100% okay, because that training was rigorous to begin with, and all that, and tough mentally and physically. But yeah, so family, pro wrestling, and my health. I think those are the three things I'm grateful for.
That's awesome. Jay, you got anything you want to add before we shut down?
Man, I want to say thank you first for coming on the show. Well, first off, thank you both for your service, because it's just, anyway, I won't get into that. Thank you for coming on the show. Absolutely. This has been an honor. Thank you for sharing what you shared. I knew I wanted to hear some deep story about you, and I got to hear that story, and I'm hoping that we shoot this out. We will shoot this out, and your fans will get to see this too. So I just thank you for coming on. It truly is an honor that you were here. So that's really all I had, man. You asked all the right questions, Sean. You asked the questions I was going to ask. So it's been an awesome show, man. So I just appreciate it very much, Johnny.
Johnny, thank you for being on the show, man. I'm so grateful to hear your story, and I'm so grateful that I had this moment to hear your story. And it's been inspiring to me. And so thank you for spending that time with us.
And I appreciate both of you gentlemen for allowing me this platform to inspire, because the three things I live by: honor, defend, inspire. I try to do those three things every day with every aspect of my life, whether it's wrestling, whether it's with my family, my kids, other people's kids, just being a decent human being in general, and trying to bring joy to those around me, and protect things I love, and inspire those who need inspiring. And I am glad that you guys gave me the platform to come on here, tell a little bit about myself. Guys, this is just the tip of the iceberg. We can run this back a couple more times, and still wouldn't crack it. But
we can have another show anytime.
This is anytime we can do it again, guys. I'm all for it. I can tell some war stories, something like we get a little deeper, next time, definitely. But I said, I'm very grateful for you guys to give me this platform.
Thank you.
Absolutely, brother. Absolutely, brother. And stick around for the show. I wanna give you a little chat. So till next time, everybody. Thank you for being here. I'm grateful for everybody. I know Jay's grateful for everybody.
Absolutely.
Till next time, be good, y'all.
What do you got to say, Sean? What do we say at the end of every?
Oh, we just picked up this new catchphrase. I forgot about it. Damn it.
People are fake, wrestling's real.
People are fake, wrestling